WMO. Allow me kindly to ask Washington to take us quickly through the program of today. There will be like an opening remark by Professor Alan Brook, and then we will have some outstanding presentations by WMO and UNDDR. And then after that, we'll have like Q&A. Washington will capture the questions from the participant, and then we'll ask the panelists to respond to those questions. And then after that, Washington will lead like a panel discussion and then wrap up this fruitful session. Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick and Washington. I'm back to you.
Thank you very much, Mudadir. Thank you very much, Nile colleagues. Thank you very much, WMO colleagues, and all participants for joining this session. We thank you so much for joining us in this session. And as Mudadir has said, we are going to have quite a number of presentations from WMO colleagues, from our partners, GEO, and also UNDRR will have some intervention. We'll have some quick opening remarks from our director, Dr. Stefan. And then after that, we shall have some presentations to follow. We'll be doing some short presentations, and maybe we might take only one question from the chat after each and every presentation. And thereafter, we shall have a session where we can address all the questions. So kindly, in between the presentations, based on time, we might pick only one question from the chat, but later we can have more questions during our Q&A time. There are people I'd shared with the links. That's why you can see quite a lot of people joining with the name Washington. So we kindly request all those people who are shared with the links, kindly you should not unmute yourself. We only expect the presenters to speak through audio and video. The rest, we kindly request that if you have any question, kindly just type it in the chat, or we have a Q&A chat, then we'll be able to respond to them. Kindly let's not ask the questions through the audio. Otherwise, I would like to welcome Stefan to start us off. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Washington. Dear colleagues, let me just share my screen. I prepared a few slides. I was already confused how many Washingtons do we have in this world. You could kindly just confirm if you could see my presentation. Yeah, okay, good. Yes. Also, welcome from my side. It's a pleasure to say a few words here at the opening of this workshop. And what I want to do in the next 8 minutes or so is kind of to cover a few remarks on early warning systems, particularly for water-related hazards. I think that the recent examples have shown, or the recent examples around the world have demonstrated us and reminded us very clearly that maybe additionally fueled through climate change, water-related hazards become in many places around the world more frequent and more violent, more severe. And so having better real end-to-end early warning systems is absolutely critical. And WMO has been working in this field a lot and will continue to do so. It's a main priority of WMO. My name is Stefan Wimbock. Many of my colleagues contributed to this presentation. Some of them are in the call and will present later. So a big thank you to all my co-authors, if I may. It's based on the statement that the Secretary General did last year at the World Meteorological Day. He said everyone around the world should be covered by an early warning system by the end of 2027, which is almost it's soon, huh? It's 4 years or so, depending on how you measure. But it's a very ambitious goal. The results of various surveys have shown that there's a significant gap. Probably only half of the members of WMO, half of the members who participated in the survey, say that they have an early warning system up and running in their multi-hazard early warning system up and running in their countries. However, in not all countries, even if there's a system, it doesn't mean that all members of society are actually covered by an early warning system. So even if we have a system, it might still be that the difficult to reach communities, particularly the poor, are deprived from the advantage of an early warning system. So it's a very ambitious goal, and WMO, together with many others, are co-leading this initiative on early warning for all, and you will hear about this later in the various presentations. I speak about early warning systems related to floods and droughts today, and just one example is this very significant flood we had in Pakistan a bit more than a year ago. And it was actually before we had a very dry area, and it was super hot. I happened to be in Pakistan in that period, and it was 50 degrees, sometimes more. And after this significant heat waves of a couple of months, which really gave the farmers a hard time, particularly the ones depending on irrigation water, there was then the monsoon rainfall, which normally falls between the whole monsoon season, was falling in a couple of days, and sometimes less than 10 days, the whole year rainfall. Monsoon rainfall of the southwest monsoon was falling in some areas, and you had very severe flooding. You had actually some areas that were inundated for many weeks, and with all the societal and health and other implications for the people, which were just devastating. And this is just one example. Last week, about exactly a week ago, we had the devastating flooding in Libya, which had an enormous amount of rainfall. Northern Africa usually receives rainfall in the northern hemisphere wintertime, and not in September. And it was a very bizarre, exceptional meteorological situation, which has characteristics of a tropical cyclone as well as a more mid-latitude storm, and that led to really enormous amount of rainfall. In Greece, they were measuring in some areas rainfall of more than 600 millimeters in a day. Can you imagine? You know, and in Libya and Northern Africa, there was one station measured more than 400 millimeters in a day, and that also led to the collapse of 2 dams. So a kind of a stark reminder that these extraordinary meteorological events, additionally fueled by climate change, then become to a water crisis because of the infrastructure, which is not adapted to that, is not properly planned, and maybe not maintenance in the necessary way, not always, and that then really makes society very, very vulnerable. And that was just a stark reminder which we got last week. Even the meteorological situation was extraordinary, but additionally the infrastructure component with the bursting of 2 dams led to this situation that probably more than 10,000 people died. At least more than 10,000 are still at the moment missed, and several thousand people registered dead in this event, and all health implications still ongoing. Good. Why do I believe early warning systems, particularly for water-related hazards, are so important? You see here a figure which demonstrated the number of people affected. You have similar figures when you look at the economic damage, and you see that 3 out of 4 hazards or disasters globally are water-related, either floods or droughts. It depends a little bit how you characterize the impact of storms, but it shows that the lion's share of the impact of disasters is water-related. Why are early warning systems so important? And there's one study which I always like to quote also when I lecture to students is, there was a nice study done by the Global Center for Climate Adaptation, and they compared different climate change adaptation measures. For instance, making water resources management more resilient through operation of dams, etc., protecting mangroves in tropical coastal areas, or improving the dryland agriculture, etc., etc. And they always compared these in terms of cost-benefit ratio. That means for every dollar you put into the investment in a certain measure, what is the payback for a society? And they found out that usually the payback is around 1 to 5. So all of these are safe investments, because every dollar you put in pays back to society with the factor 5. But there is one measure that really was an outlier and was significantly above in terms of cost-benefit ratio. These are early warning systems. It's probably in the order of 1 to 9. You find some studies that have a cost-benefit ratio of 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, or but 1 to 10 and 11 as well. So average, they were giving a kind of an estimate. Early warning systems has a payback of roughly 1 to 9. So it's clearly demonstrated what is the huge societal benefit of investments in early warning. Quickly to WMO, what you see here in front of us are the main the long-term ambitions of the strategy of WMO when it comes to hydrology. There are part of the WMO plan of action. There have these 8 long-term ambitions, and the first 2 are directly related to floods and droughts. I will not guide you through all of these ambitions. Dominic said I should wrap it up in 10 minutes, and next time, Dominic, you give me more time and I explain all of them. But today, maybe only focusing that the first ambition is no one should be surprised by a flood, like the situation in Libya we had last week, when there was the highest flood peak after bursting of the dams, and this extraordinary rainfall was at 3 a.m. in the morning, and people were surprised by the flood, unfortunately, and some neighborhoods were really literally washed away into the Mediterranean Sea. It's really a terrible situation, which is costly in many ways, and therefore the ambition is that no one is surprised by a flood anymore. And the second one, everyone is prepared by drought. Drought are usually events which have a slower onset and a longer period of time, which they cover by definition. You have some flash droughts, which is a special phenomenon. But on the other hand, we have the surprise is not so important for the drought, but it's the being prepared to be able to deal with the very severe water shortage in agriculture and for all the other uses, including ecosystems, which is so critically. Therefore, we need to prepare ourselves and need to have the infrastructure and land use and systems in place. Floods and droughts are very important. This is a global overview of the most severe events that we were observing around the world. This is a selection of the ones which have the highest impact in terms of number of people affected and also costly to the society. And you can see that back in 2022, we still had the impacts of the persistent and long-term drought in the Greater Horn of Africa, which are devastating situations for many countries there, including Somalia, parts of Ethiopia, and Kenya, and neighboring countries as well. Last point, which I wanted to make when I speak about WMO's impact in work in the early warning systems for floods and droughts, we go along the whole value chain of hydrological forecasting and warning, which after we understand risks more or less, or we're able to map them, we go the whole way from data collection, monitoring, which needs the right setup in terms of instruments, as well as the station network, etc., design and all that, but also going then into modeling and forecasting, so making the necessary prediction, disseminating the knowledge to the right agencies, and the national hydrometeorological agencies are absolutely critical in that step along the whole value chain, but also to be the one who disseminates at the right moment the right information, support decisions, as well as the response to warning. So we try to support the whole chain and not only the monitoring and modeling, for instance. So now it's really going along the whole chain. And needless to say, we do this in collaboration with our partners. My last slide, if you look at the larger circulation patterns, we had recently the declaration of ENSO, excuse me, for the El Nino Southern Oscillation Signal. It was in early July. I showed this slide once in the US and then said, well, 4th of July, it's not about the American Independence Day. It's actually the onset of ENSO in 2023. And that day you see that it was declared. So the likelihood that we will have another La Nina year was 0. And likely we will have an ENSO El Nino signal already this year. And that leads to a certain pattern if the climatology behaves in terms of translating it into precipitation and temperature patterns, then we should see in the coming months and years, if the signal continues in such a pattern. And we see for the region, and speaking to Uganda today, it is predicted. It's of course there's no guarantee at all, but the kind of seasonal prediction and likelihood indicates that we will have a more wetter season, if that is correct, and it will be exciting to study that in the coming months. So with this, I would like to thank you, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion, and already sent my apologies because I have to jump to other meetings as well during the afternoon session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for that wonderful presentation about the bigger introduction of early warnings for all, the 8 ambitions for hydrology, and also just giving the whole hydrological value chain. We request all participants kindly, if you can post some questions on the chat so that maybe Stefan can respond to them before he leaves. Otherwise, as you post your questions, I would like to invite the second presenter, that is my colleague Ramesh.
Hi, Washington. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
If you can share the screen, I would be happy, Washington. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Can you please put it in the presentation mode, Washington?
Yeah, it is in the presentation mode on my screen.
Okay. It's okay. Maybe I could continue with this only, and probably if others can see in the presentation mode, that will be fine. So, good afternoon, everyone. As Washington mentioned,
Sorry,
my name is
Washington.
Yeah.
The presentation is not in the presentation mode. So
Okay.
kindly share again.
Okay. Is it in the presentation mode?
No,
not yet for me. Yeah.
maybe share the whole screen, not only the slide. If you share the whole screen, maybe it is better. And
or you share the wrong screen if you have two screens. That happens to
yeah,
me
maybe
sometimes.
if you have two, you are sharing the wrong one.
Okay. Strange. Okay. Is it now in?
Yes, that's
Okay.
perfect, Washington.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
once again, good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to give a quick overview of this project, Water at the Heart of Climate Action, which we are going to start implementing it very soon. Currently, we are in the inception phase. Basically, this project is linked with early warning for all as a good example for early warning for all, mainly covering all the 4 pillars of early warning system, starting from risk knowledge, then observation, monitoring, modeling, forecasting, even developing early warning system. The third pillar, which is mainly on early warning dissemination and communication, and the fourth pillar on locally led adaptation and response. So this project is implemented by multiple partners. I mean, it is developed by multiple international partners who are basically IFRC, who is leading the consortium together with WMO and SOF. And also we have UNDRR as a partner to work on risk knowledge. Next slide, please. This is a quick background, especially in Nile Basin countries. We have seen in the past years there has been a lot of climate-related crisis, especially water-related risk in terms of floods and drought events, as well as water scarcity during the dry season. And eventually it has been leading to food security and issues on livelihood. So basically, the project is trying to tackle water-related risk, which is also linked with weather and climate. And in all these previous events, we have seen that the most vulnerable are mostly affected during such situation. So this is one of the important criteria set out by the donor, that a lot of activities under this project should be carried out at the community level. So this is very important to understand that having water related action would be very important or crucial in order to ensure that we are ready to face for any climate-related crisis, including weather-related, severe weather-related events. So this is a quick introduction to the project, aligning with the background. Next slide, please. Some of the issues, I mean, this project is not going to be the first project in the country or in the region where we are going to develop something on flood and drought management, especially on the early warning side. There has been a lot of work already carried out in this country. But what we have seen from previous projects or ongoing projects, there are some issues or something which is not already happening is low coordination, and even to have some systematic approach. There has not been any incentives in terms of ensuring all the partners are consulted or involved in various processes, starting from the design, requirement gathering, design, and the development. So one of the issues were on coordination. Then a lot of lack of investment in hydrometeorological capacity and risk-based decision making. This is quite true in terms of hydrometeorological agencies, which there is not lack of there is lack of recent infrastructures and services available with them, and also the data and information is very crucial, and in most of the cases they are not available in real time, or basically historical data are not there for calibration of model or information. So these are some this is very crucial in terms of ensuring that hydromet capacities are increased through project. And then the early warning system, as I mentioned, that they exist, but they are not around. They are not designed around the users, meaning the local communities as well as the receivers of the early warning. They are not involved to see how best the early warning could reach timely, and with also ensuring this warning allow them to know what exactly the impact will be and what necessary action they need to take. Some of the activities at the community level were fragmented and disconnected from the national system. Usually we focus on short-term responses, not on resilience. So it is very important to ensure that how the locally led adaptation and DRR related measures ensure there is a resilience. In a way, many of the solutions are not having commitment or buy-in from the stakeholders, so it lacks ownership as well as sustainability. Next slide. So as I was mentioning, this project is going to cover all the 4 pillars of early warning system. So we all know the first pillar is on risk knowledge and governance, then pillar 2 on observation, monitoring, forecasting, and the third is on early warning system and communication. Finally on anticipatory action and locally led adaptation. So under this project, we are working only on water related hazards, especially focusing on floods and drought. This is the main significance of this project, to tackle on water related risk. Finally, apart from these 4 pillars, we are also having some cross-cutting activity between the pillars. For example, the disaster risk knowledge would be quite important and useful coming out from pillar 1 as an input to pillar 2, so that when we are doing forecasting, it is not just a simple forecasting, but also an impact-based forecast. And similarly, from pillar 2, the early warning information are communicated timely with impact area and possible response action. So all these pillars are connected to each other, and this is something we have focused as a cross-cutting activity in the project to ensure we are aligned with each other. I mean, different pillars are working together with each other. Next slide, please. Basically, there might be a question that why this particular basin was selected. So as I mentioned in this initial background study, we came to know that this region has been heavily affected by water and climate related events. We also considered that mainly that in these countries, there is a lot of stakeholders which are already available, like IFRC, they have their national society, then WMO has their national meteorological and hydrological services, UNDRR, they have their disaster management agencies in the country. So it was quite a good opportunity to ensure that we use these stakeholders in our design and implementation process. Also, we wanted to consider as a regional approach because this is something we also always considered for water related risks, that water does not have boundaries, and it is very important to see how water is acting from upstream to downstream. So this would be very important to consider Nile Basin entirely for this project, ensuring that capacity at the national levels are developed. These countries were also part of the first 30 priority countries for early warning for all. And this is very important and crucial that we are focusing on the priorities countries and ensuring that after this project, we could also scale it to other countries near to Nile Basin, so that they could also benefit from what we have done. The total budget of this project is around 55 million euros, and WMO, as I said, is leading pillar 2, where we are receiving around 6.5 million euros, and together with SOF, which is receiving 15 million euros to ensure that meteorological observations are maintained, and basically we have the G-bond compliances. The donor of this project is Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kingdoms of Netherlands. So they are supporting us in this project financially, and also ensuring that we are linking with various national level of Red Cross, which are available in these countries. Currently, for Sudan, we are keeping it on hold due to the political instability, but we are continuing to work with the other 3 countries, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Uganda. We had recently some inception workshop in Ethiopia, where we did some stakeholder consultation and identified some needs and gaps in the country in terms of having flood and drought early warning system. When I say flood and drought early warning system, basically we are going to implement WMO Hydro SOS system, and I'm sure in the coming presentation you will hear about the concept of Hydro SOS as well as the products which is going to deliver under this project. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I said, WMO is leading the pillar 2, but we are also linking with pillar 1 and 3, and together with SOF, we will initially ensure that the observation networks are maintained, so that we have data and information which are very important for carrying out modeling and forecasting, and even for decision making. And once we have some information from pillar 1 on risk, we can also use the data and information, hydromet data and information, together with the risk information to develop impact-based forecasts, especially for floods and droughts. So this is something will be the second step under the project. And finally, through National Meteorological and Hydrological Services and Red Cross, we will ensure that early warning systems are shared with relevant national and local stakeholders. And this is something will be covered under pillar 3 together, or linking it with pillar 2. Next slide, please. Here you could see the stakeholders in the country. As I said, in the 4 countries, we have a lot of national stakeholders coming from meteorology, hydrology, even disaster management, environmental agencies. So all these stakeholders will be part of the regional entity, and that is something we will ensure to use this existing structure in the country to implement the project. There will be a lot of important roles and responsibility of INGOs and NGOs to implement community level activities, which is under pillar number 4. So they will be heavily involved in order to ensure that activities or whatever products are developed, it is reaching out to the local or community level. There is a lot of support, as I said, at the regional level and international level. We will use the regional authorities also, because as I was saying, that water related events not only happen within the country, but it goes beyond the country. So regional partners like NBI, IGAD, IPAC, they will play a very crucial role in this project. Next slide. Another thing in this project is that we are not going to develop anything from scratch. We want to ensure that whatever is available in this country, we try to reuse as much as possible to ensure that there is some kind of synergies and complementarities. Presently, there are a lot of other WMO projects in this country, especially the cruise project, climate risk and early warning system projects, especially for the East African region, Horn of Africa. These two projects cover some of the countries of this Water at the Heart of Climate Action project, and we will ensure that we support each other through the projects and we are not duplicating the effort. There is another activity on hydrology which is implemented by WMO Hydro Hub, which are more focused on capacity building and ensuring that there is a data management and sharing support or the activities carried out, because this is something is an immediate need in South Sudan, and this project will specially work on these aspects, and then the Water at the Heart of Climate Action will build upon what has been done or what will be done under this South Sudan project by Hydro Hub initiative. And others, we know that based on initial consultation, there are a lot of ongoing work on flood and drought with IGAD, ICPAC. Also, a lot of work has been done by World Bank, NBI, and especially on the agriculture, food security, and livelihood work has been done on FAO and WFP. So this is something we will ensure to use and to build upon instead of developing anything from scratch. Next slide, please. As I was mentioning that recently we had the Inception workshop in Ethiopia, where we presented the project to the stakeholders, identified some gaps and needs, as well as established the country team, which will help us in the development of the project proposal as well as in the implementation phase. So this is something we have done for Ethiopia. Very soon we are going to carry out similarly the Inception workshop in Uganda and South Sudan while we wait for situation in Sudan to improve. This will allow us to also identify some other projects and initiatives which we have missed till now once we consult the countries, basically to see if we need to build synergies and complementarities. As I said, it's very important this workshop is used as an opportunity to identify focal points in the country from various agencies, as well as to establish regional and country teams so that they can help us to develop the action plan and also during the implementation in the implementation of the activity. So this is something we are using the opportunity to consult the countries and basically work with them in the design and the implementation of the project. Another thing we have to do in the inception phase, which has been started from September till next year, July, is to ensure we gather some of the information on climate risk, what were the losses and damage in the previous events, some of information on vulnerability, as I said, on the capacity and needs of hydrometeorological agencies. So all these things will be used or carried out during the inception phase, which we are currently going on. Very important to also identify some baseline and indicators on various activities and output. This will allow us to track it, our progress during the implementation phase for the next 4 or 5 years, and later on to also present to the donor that what was the baseline and how much impact the project has created in terms of building the capacity in the countries. Next slide. Yeah, this is just to give a brief about how we are going to work. The project is of 4 years. As I said, the year 1 starts with an inception phase where we are going to check on various needs, capacity, and also a projects or initiative where we can build build synergies and complementarities. And then year 2 will be mainly to develop the early warning system products. This is something through Hydro SOS we will develop, ensure the capacity at the national and regional levels are strengthened, and we have used the stakeholders in the country so that they know how to use the product, and later on also in terms of sustainability to maintain it. So this is something we will start from year 2, and year 3 and 4 we will ensure the local data and information are integrated and the system is operationally available to monitor the events. And even there are a lot of activities at the community level will be carried out in order to ensure that the communities are also prepared for early action once they receive the warning from the national level. Year 5 will be mainly for pilot testing of this early warning system, mainly to ensure how effective and how applicable this early warning system is in the country. During the monsoon and the dry season, we can do the testing of hydro SOS system, and in case of need, we can fine tune or validate the system with additional data and information. And also year 5 will be very crucial to try to see or to develop strategies of scaling up this initiative to cover also other region or nearby or neighboring countries of Nile Basin, so that we start to have a regional approach, not only with these 4 countries, but also with the other countries which needs similar kind of system in their respective country. Next slide, please. That's all from my side. In case of any question, I will be happy to answer. I'm here for next 1 hour. So thank you so much. Back to you, Washington.
Thank you very much, Ramesh, for that wonderful presentation and giving us a brief overview of the project and the benefits that it will bring to the member countries. And there are already some questions on the chat, so I would prefer that you respond to them, because maybe the time we'll be having question and answer session, you might not be in position to talk. So there is a question from Rania and there's a question from Asmahan. I think you can see them in the Q&A, if you can respond to them, Ramesh.
Yes, surely I will do that thing. Thank you, Washington.
Okay, so you can just type you can type your answers. And because Stefan will be leaving in the middle of the sessions, I would just like to maybe pose one question to Stefan that he was supposed to answer during the panel discussions. And I will just, the question, Stefan, is what are the key WMO initiatives and some key projects or foreseen projects that WMO intends to implement to mitigate the hazards within the framework of early warning for all within the NBI?
Okay, thank you. Well, key projects, there are so many, it's difficult to say. At the one end, there's quite a number of so-called cruise projects in different countries and regions of the world, including in East Africa. And furthermore, from the early warning initiative, which based on the statement of the UN Secretary General, briefly spoke about that, there were 30 so-called priority countries selected, which have all undergone a kind of a rapid assessment of what are the needs for early warning systems, and including Uganda. And also the neighboring countries, South Sudan, Sudan, Ethiopia, are part of the 30 countries. And in all of these, there will be activities to strengthen the capability, to strengthen the capacity of the countries to implement and properly implement an end-to-end early warning system in these 30 countries. Obviously, this is not only work by WMO, but very much in partnership with many others. And I don't know, there's so many other projects in the Pacific and in different regions of the world. Ramesh has been leading a program financed by the Adaptation Fund in East Africa, particularly the Volta Basin. And there's 5 riparian countries in the Volta Basin. And also to support their integrated flood and drought management system, which also relates to strengthening the capacity of early warning. These are just a few highlights, but there's many projects that WMO is involved and with many, many partners. Thank you.
Very much, Dr. Stefan. And I think also if you check on the Q&A, there's a question that might be for you also from Ashetu. You can just maybe type your answer there and respond to him or her. I think now we need to invite our third presenter, and that is Sulagna on Hydro SOS. Sulagna, thanks.
Everyone, I'll just share my screen. Washington, you might have to stop sharing so that I can share my screen. Do you see a presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm Sulagna Mishra, Scientific Officer at WMO. And in this presentation, I will be speaking about hydrological status and outlook system, HydroSOS, which was mentioned earlier by Ramesh as well, and how HydroSOS works as a backbone for the early warning system, especially for hydrological disasters. This presentation is prepared by me together with in contributions from several colleagues in our organization and also from our partners. So talking about hydrological disasters, we know that more than half of the global population lives under areas which have drought risks. So at least suffer from water scarcity for 1 month during a year. The same figure also stands for floods. There's large portions of the world which are under flood risks. Therefore, we need hydrological information and early warning to be able to prepare ourselves for these kind of disasters. But not just disasters, water information and data is necessary for various other sectors that we deal with in our day-to-day basis. For example, infrastructure, climate analysis, wash, food and agriculture, ecosystem, and the list goes on. To give a small example of how climate solutions even require water information, the figure, for example, in the right, in the figure we see a picture of agriculture for which we need information to be able to prepare ourselves better, and on the right we see a picture of a dam, which also for which to know how we can operate best, we need information on how our water resources are going to look in the next month, in the next season, to be able to optimize our operation and to be able to adapt to the scarcity if there is, or to adapt to an excess of availability. So what's really stopping us from being able to take this right kind of decisions, and what's really standing between us and a proper early warning? Stefan mentioned that only half of the world is covered with early warning. Only half of our population have access to these kind of warnings. But what really is the problem between where we are? Because we have all kinds of technology available, but why are we not able to cover the whole world? So this brings us to this cycle of gaps. It shows a list of gaps that is really out there, which prevents us from really having the early warning. For example, awareness in a societal and a political level, lack of will, lower investments, lack of capacity, poor infrastructure, for example, lack of monitoring networks, therefore lack of data, and which all leads to the lack of products and services. And this is kind of a vicious circle. So where do we really start from? And this is where HydroSOS comes in. What HydroSOS does is helps us take into account whatever is really available right now, whatever data is available in hand, plus taking into account technology like models, other data sources like remotely sensed data, satellite products, for example, and taking all of this into account for providing the products that needs to be that's needed for taking some kind of decisions, or even for early warning. What HydroSOS also does is stand as a link between monitoring and decision making. So wherever there is a lack in data, it also it bridges these gaps using these innovative measures. But also what it does is provide products in a standardized and understandable manner. So not really giving out exact quantifiable numbers, but more in terms of indicators, which is understandable to policymakers, to water managers, to media, to society in general, to our main stakeholders. And at the same time, it ensures that these products that we are talking about are accessible and available at a large scale, may it be through bulletins, may it be through a portal, and so on. It really depends on how the country, how the member wants to have the last mile connectivity, last mile to reach the people, but we make sure that it is communicated in some way or the other. What HydroSOS provides is an overview of the hydrological status. So how does our river discharge, how does our groundwater and the different components of the hydrological cycle looks right now. Is it really normal in comparison to the hydrological normal of that particular area? Is it normal, or is it significantly different from normal? So instead of giving these results in terms of numbers, what we show is in colors or in percentiles, so that it's easy to understand. And I will show some examples later, but just to give you an idea is that we show it in terms of indicators. And then in the next step, so the first two are the status, so the nowcast, how we are doing right now in terms of our water resources, but at the same time we also give an assessment of how it's going to look in the next weeks, in the next month. Is it likely to get better or worse? So we can adapt ourselves and prepare ourselves much better. We know that hydrological information comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So it's really important that we are not reinventing the wheel and using whatever is really available. And this is where HydroSOS brings together all the different products across the different scales. So the national, basin, regional products, the global products are brought together to form the HydroSOS product. So what you will see in a HydroSOS portal will be different layers of all this information complementing each other and also bridging the gaps of each other. In the graph down there, you see the different kinds of hydrological forecasts that we can have. So we have the nowcast, which is the status, 3 to 5 days, which is usually used for flood forecasting, 1 to 3 months, which is seasonal, subseasonal, which is also often used for drought forecasting. And then we have climate change scenarios, which is a scenario analysis, which we do in a decadal time scale. And across the different spatial resolutions, and HydroSOS works across the different spatial resolution. But when we're talking about time scales, we are focusing more on the nowcast, so how we are now and how we are going to look in a 1 to 3 months in a seasonal, subseasonal time scale. So talking about where we are right now, HydroSOS, the project itself, it started with a pilot phase in 2017, and we had a 4 years pilot until 2021. In the 2021 Congress, in WMO Congress, it was approved, and all the members, so members meaning all the countries who are members of WMO, approved HydroSOS, and they wanted to have this implemented in their countries. Since then, we have started implementing. So we are at different stages in different countries and different basins. We are approaching it all at the same time. So we are working on a global scale product, so different kind of drought indicators, for example, also with global models for a larger geographical coverage. But at the same time, we are also working at basin scale and national scale. So what you see here is where we are already, and the color shows what is the state of the project. So as you said, as you saw before in the presentation of Ramesh, we have the project called Cruise East Africa, which is focusing on the Lake Victoria Basin countries. And then we have the Nile Basin. We have the project in climate, water at the heart of climate action. And this is covering the 4 countries in the Nile Basin. And we have different other projects, just to give you an example. And similarly, in different other parts of the world, we have several projects and several activities going on. So enough about what we want to do, but now I would like to show what we have already done, what we have already developed, and some example products that the countries have developed and how we see them now in our portal. So when we are talking about standardized products and standardized variable, and that we make this all available in one platform, we are going to start with the 5 key variables in this stage. So we are talking about runoff, we have stream flow, groundwater, soil moisture, and snow water equivalent. So we'll start with this, and the idea is that we also include other variables like evapotranspiration, water quality at a later stage. And when we are talking about products, we are talking about both status, so the nowcast, as well as the indicators for the outlook, so how the outlook is going to change. And we show this in terms of we show this in percentiles and in colors. So how we do this is through unified products. few important considerations for having unified products is to first have a metric how these products are calculated, and this needs to be standardized across the different platforms from the different countries who are calculating it. So for this, we have developed standard methodologies, which we have supplied to the different countries who are implementing HydroSOS at the moment. So what is how we categorize the normals, how we calculate them. So this is a part of the standard methods. So we also standardize what kind of spatial resolution we have. We take into account both modeled and observed data whatever is available. And for the geographical extent, we work at both local and global scale. So we combine the global products that are available, and we also work from a bottom-up approach. So the local plus regional plus the global scale products. And then we have a standardized way of collecting all this information into our HydroSOS portal, which is either through a CSV file or a NetCDF for now. The next thing is, when we talk about standard products, we also have to ensure that there is proper quality checks. So we make sure that the quality, for now we have defined it that at least 50% of data should be available for a certain month. Only then we consider it quality checked. So only then we take the data into account for the further calculations. And this is for stream flow. Similarly, for soil moisture, for groundwater, we have different matrices. Then we do a certain kind of processing, model blending, for example, bias correction based on the guidelines. We make sure that the uncertainty estimates are done and are also provided in the results. And of course, we also mention the R-square value or the mean error, some kind of value for giving us the reliability of the results that the stakeholders see in the portal. So how we really do this? This is one example I would like to give for stream flow. So what we initially do is calculate the monthly stream flow. So for this, we make sure that we have at least 50% of the dates should have some information. Based on that, we calculate the flows for the average. So calculate the flows as a percentage of the average. Then we calculate the rank. So how did this particular month, let's say we are sitting at 2023, we are talking about April. So we calculate how did April 2023, how did the average flow of April 2023 rank in comparison to the last 30 years of April flows. So that's the rank. Then we calculate the rank percentiles and we give it a color. So with this particular information, this is the only information we will then see in the final result. And with this, it's very clear. A stakeholder doesn't have to be a hydrologist to understand really that red is much below normal or blue is much above normal. So give you an example how it looks. This is from some of the results that was calculated from all the available data that we had in the month of April. And what you see here is indicators showing high flow, above normal flow, below normal, notably low flow. And what we see here is just the colors, and the colors were, and this was all calculated in the similar fashion for all the gauges around the world. Giving an example from the region in Africa, of course, we have many projects that are going on, but I'll give you an example of a case study from Lake Victoria Basin. We had a workshop last month here, and so this is what we have achieved here is very fresh. So I would like to show this. When we started our HydroSOS project in Lake Victoria Basin, we identified the main challenges and the gaps gaps in available data in terms of both historic data as well as there was a long lapse between the data being accessible by the members, because many of them had to go to the stations to collect this data. The second challenge was few monitoring stations, and of course resource and capacity was also an issue. So with Cruise East Africa, we have tried to address some of this by an extensive stakeholder engagement. We realized that this is what our members want. So what you see here is a future plan for Lake Victoria Basin. Year 1 stands for 2023, and year 2 to 5 is for further on. So we are right now with the Cruise East Africa project trying to achieve everything that is listed here for year 1. So what we are working on is trying to calculate status products for all the 5 countries for stream flow and groundwater, wherever information is available, and for rainfall. And we, instead of focusing on the entire Lake Victoria Basin, we are trying to develop the capacities of the technical people in the organizations, in the countries, so that they can then further use this information for the whole of their countries and not just Lake Victoria Basin. For now, we are focusing on Kagera and Mara river basins of Lake Victoria Basin. And in the next slide, you will see some of the results that we have developed in the workshop that we had last month. So what you see here are the different dots in the little figure down there. What you see is the HydroSOS portal for Lake Victoria Basin, and the colors then show how the colors show basically how the stream flow status looked in that particular month for that particular gauge. And all this information was developed by the members who were participating in the workshop during the 4 days workshop. And now we have entered a kind of a pre-operational phase where we are going to have this data or this information updated every 3 months. And once we enter an operational, we will see this updated more frequently. Similarly to Lake Victoria Basin, we also had a workshop for Ghana, where the members were at UKCEH, the National Hydro Service in UK in Wallingford, and our colleagues there, they had a capacity development training, and they worked on doing outlook part. So in the Lake Victoria Basin, we are more focusing on the status part for now. In Ghana, they have already reached the outlook part, and in this workshop, they developed, they learned how to use the data that they had in their countries to generate seasonal to sub-seasonal outlook products for stream flow. This is a global pilot that we developed during our pilot phase. The colorful purple, pink global map that you see in the background is a global product. So it's from SMHI. It's a global forecast from SMHI. And you might be able to see little dots on the top of it, which is in situ data from the different countries. So this is a typical combination. This is a classic combination of both bottom up and top down approaches that you see in one map. Basically, what we would in this implementational phase, what we would also like to have is not just one global product, but an ensemble of global products in the background, where the users can really choose if they want to have one or multiple, or they can choose which global products they would like to have in the background, and we give an ensemble results in the back, and then on the top of it we can have dots showing in situ results that are coming from in situ data. This is another example of global products. So this is river discharge anomalies for 2022, for the whole of 2022, calculated using 8 global hydrological models, and we expect that most of these models will also then provide data for our HydroSOS portal once it is operational. We often get this question that why so much focus in stream flow, and can we also use these methods, or will HydroSOS also show other results? So just to give you an example, we also are currently working with groundwater status and trends. We have our partner IGRAC, the International Groundwater Data Center, which collects all the data for groundwater monitoring station, and this partner also helped us to develop the standard methodology for calculating groundwater status. So we do this very similar to how we did the stream flow status. So based on how much data is available, we define the historic period, and if the historic period is long enough and it is representative enough, we can then calculate these percentile values and show how the groundwater of that particular aquifer is changing, the groundwater level of that particular aquifer is changing over time, and also how it stood in 2022, or how it looks in this particular month in comparison to the historic normal of that particular basin, of that particular aquifer. Similarly, we have some examples here, which they did by collecting data from the different countries. So this is an example from Brazil, and you can see the different colors there showing that the different aquifers behaved differently, even though they're very close to each other. So it also highlights the fact that how important it is to have in situ data, and we cannot really replace every measurement through model or through remotely sensed information. Similarly, for soil moisture, we can also use HydroSOS indicators, and the same then stands true for eventually when we start developing for evapotranspiration or water quality, for example. Looking at the time, I come to my last slide where we can very we saw that HydroSOS is effective to give us information about how the status is now and how it's going to look, how the forecasts are going to look in the next season in a next seasonal to sub-seasonal scale. So this is clearly helping us to kind of forecast at least droughts directly, but also at the same time, if we know that if we can see that our soil moisture, for example, in a certain area is already saturated, it also means that next time there is a large rain event, it's probably going to be a flood. So in this way, HydroSOS directly helps us to effectively strengthen our early warning systems, but at the same time, having the hydrological information ahead of time, knowing where we stand and how we are going to look, how our status is going to look in the next season, helps us to also do effective water management and to prepare ourselves better against for climate adaptation. So not just early warning and disaster risk reduction, but also for the industry to help in mitigation for energy, agriculture, as well as public water supply. So overall, an effective IWRM plus early warning system. So with that, I finish my presentation and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Very much, Sulagna, for such a wonderful presentation. And we hope that we've all captured how we can make use of the data that we already have to just generate some product, generating status, and also forecast, and hopefully outlook. So there are questions on the chat, so you can respond to them. And we request all the participants kindly just use the Q&A to post your questions so that the panelists can respond to them. Otherwise, I think is okay, unless if there is a question that might need, I think all those questions, you can respond to them in the chat. So we move to the next presentation. And then Sulagna, kindly you can remember to share the presentation with the participants, so you can stop sharing so that I can share the screen. The next presentation is about the data, mostly in situ data, and this is about data access and data sharing. So I need to check which screen I'm sharing. Good. So I believe you can see my slide in the presentation mode. Can you see it in the present? Okay. I want to thank you very much. I want to present just to build on what my colleagues have presented, and this is basically what some initiatives do we have that supports timely and sustained interoperable data access and data management. And the first thing is that we are all aware that these days few people basically want to talk about hydrological monitoring. And we all know that in Africa, basically, a lot of in situ, there is a decline in the number of hydrological stations. But we all know that, again, we cannot run away from this because this is very key. And all of us these days talk so much on the water supply, but we are also forgetting that we need to manage our water resources. And we cannot manage what we don't monitor. So therefore, the call is that we still have to invest in monitoring our water resources. And the call is also that at the current world, we need to collaborate together in monitoring our water resources. So everyone basically knows about water, and majority of people talks about the water hazards. A few people are interested about the data, and very few people are interested in the monitoring. But what are some of the challenges that we have? If you look at some of the blocks that I have here, is that we have different challenges to hydrological data exchange and management. This is basically because of the nature of the sources of this data being from different organizations. And we don't have much like the global standardized way of exchanging this data. So the thing here is that based on the data from different sources, we need to find a consistent approach of sharing this data. And as all of us talks about this, the hydrological hazards, one thing we have to know that when we talk about floods, we cannot talk of one agency being able to forecast flood well, but we'll need actually interagencies or different domains coming together, especially the Met and the hydrological services. And that is what we are calling there the Earth Systems domain, that we need to see a way of how could different services be able to exchange data for us to be able to address these hydrological hazards or extremes. The call again, the thing is that we need to keep the wheel rolling. We talk about observations, we think about data and information, and we also think about the products and the services, because each of these drives the other. And at the end of the day, we are intending to fix the blocks, fix the gaps, create a united world where everyone is happy, and then we need to collaborate together. So the question here, we need to know how much water do we have, where, who owns this water, what is it used for, and everything. And all that we can do just by having enough data. But what are some of the challenges of sharing this data? We have things to do with we have technical challenges. We have capacity where we have we have to train the national hydrological services or data providers on some capacities. And then we have political reasons, because we know that water is very political. And then we have some legal frameworks. We have financial challenges. Then we have issues to do with data quality. Some people are not sharing because data is not quality checked, so you don't want to share it out there. And then we have security issues, privacy, and then trust. But all this presents some new opportunities where we have some new approaches to water monitoring and data sharing. And then this one also help us to start asking ourselves that can we demonstrate the socioeconomic benefits and analysis of data access and sharing. And then could we think of some advocacy materials and outreach programs. When this data is well managed and shared, then we can have better warnings, better risk management of our water resources, and the water is a key driver to economic gain. WMO has a program that is called WMO Hydrological Observing System. The WMO Hydrological Observing System is a solution that provides a new approach to data exchange, data access, and creating interoperability where we use open standards. The key thing here is that WHOS promotes what we call a consensus-based data sharing agreement, which means different services, maybe within a nation or at a transboundary level, they can discuss and agree on how to share the data. Again, it provides some standardized approaches to hydrological vocabularies, standardized web services, and some cataloging. And the key to this is that a new way of exchanging data in such a way that we can know the status of our observations. In this case means that you expose the metadata, but actually data is not shared. So by giving the status of your stations and data, maybe we can have an overview, let's say in the Nile Basin, of like how many monitoring stations are basically transmitting, which ones have data, which ones are not having data, and what kind of parameters do they measure. So that one is an information we can also have in host, but you don't share the data. So in that case, you are just providing the information. But then you can also choose to share. But the new model here, as opposed to the traditional way of pushing all your 30 years data maybe to a given server somewhere, we are saying that you choose, where we use the WMO Unified Data Policy to talk about, we talk about the core data and recommended data. So basically means you choose which variables do you want to make core and which variables do you want to make recommended. So whatever data you label as recommended, it means you choose who accesses it. So you have access control over it, and what you could share with everyone is maybe core. So therefore, it means the data provider still has some control of whom do they want to share the data with. And whose, we have two approaches to data exchange. One, we have a case where the data is fetched from the data provider. So it means the data is basically stored by the data provider, not any other data center. But the other option is where we have data being cached in a data center, and therefore users can access them. But that one depends on what kind of data are you really willing to exchange. The other thing is that who's basically, I've said this, it promotes that timely and sustainable data access. And what are the key things that we can have here? Number one, it helps us to discover the existing data sources out there. We know that there's a lot of hydrological data, but accessing them is basically a challenge. We are also defining some key terms that should help us to search this data over the web using a URL. And then we can download the data. But in cases where data is not shared, only metadata, then you can only visualize the metadata. It also allows us to, we are working currently to allow users to subscribe to a specific data set or a specific product. For example, if you are interested in, let's say, some updates on River Nile, then you should be able to subscribe to that. And whenever there is available data set from River Nile, then you receive the notification. And then we are planning to downscale it so that you can actually move downwards. And for example, if you are just interested, let's say in the White Nile, but maybe stations from a given specific countries, then you should be able to subscribe to those stations. And whenever data is available, then you can receive notifications. And this one, we are doing it through topic hierarchy, where we are grouping the hydrological data. We look at them in terms of surface observations. Are they from river, are they from lakes? Then we have groundwater observations and all that. So those are some of the current development that we are undertaking here in WMO. And then we have the whose is already an operational system, is already working. We have the whose portal here. Through that link, when I share, you can access that portal. We are implementing it using different web interfaces. We have the Water Data Explorer, and then we have the ArcGIS. And then we are using whos to provide data to the model system. So we can fetch data, let's say, for example, in the NBI, it means if we have a model system for River Nile, then we can fetch data from different countries and also from different sources. And then we harmonize this data so that we feed it into the model using a standard format, as we have done in La Plata, that is South America. And we've also done in Sava River Basin, where we fetch data from all different countries, but we feed into the model. In that case, it means the data might not be shared for access, but the data can be shared just with the model. So it just pushed to the model, but maybe it cannot be accessed. So that is why we are saying you provide different ways of accessing data. Here you can only see some pilot implementations. And then we also do some monitoring to see like who is using this data and from where. So that is something which is very important. Some drivers, you can always choose different views. And then we have different tools that you can use to implement whos, because it's not specific to anything. The key thing is removing the interoperability, because if we have 10 data providers, then it means and if they are using different formats, then it means it is upon maybe the person running the model or the person who want to process this data to harmonize all those 10 different formats. So what whos is currently doing is to have a broker also in the middle to be able to deal with all those formats and then push for you data in the format that you want. So if we have maybe data in text, CSV, and NetCDF and everything, no, sorry, CSV, text, and all other formats, then you can always decide which format you want this data to be pushed to. And then one of the things we are doing is also metadata mapping, where we do something called, we develop some ontologies. So we know that there are different definitions of the logical variables. So we try to map them to the global definition, which is done currently here at WMO. The key thing is that for us to be able to share the data well, we must agree on some standardizations. Just the way for us to have this conference, we had to agree on a standard that we have a language of presentation and we have the rules. So it's just our call that it is better for us also to adapt some standards. And if we can't adapt that standards, then we need to have some way of brokering them. Unless we have a consistent approach, then it will be very difficult to share this data. Currently, WMO and OGC have worked on one standard that is called WaterML 2.0 standard that helps in exchanging hydrological observations and data. The bigger picture here is that WMO is currently looking at how to be able to access all the data that is exchanged within different domains. So we have cryosphere people, we have climate people, we have ocean people, marine people, hydrologists, meteorologists. All these domains have been sharing data among themselves. But looking at the early warnings for all and the hydrological hazards and other hazards apart from the hydrological hazards, it is a big call that we need to promote data sharing across different domains. So what we are working currently is within there's a program in WMO called WMO Information System that provides a consistent way to share data among different domains. And therefore it means that currently if a data which is shared publicly through WHOS can also be accessed maybe by other domain, MET and other colleagues. But I've said that the level of access will depend on what the country decides and what the data provider decides. So you can control, like, the framework is there to allow the data be accessible, but it's upon you to control like who basically accesses this data. So, and that is all. Thank you. So we move to the next presentation, that is from Zablon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Washington. And it's a good afternoon to everybody from here. So let me put up my presentation. Can you see it?
Yeah, but not in presentation mode.
I've now just put in presentation mode. I'll be sharing with you on the early warning action plan developed for Africa just recently. As a way of introduction, we have all heard that recently Africa has experienced a significant increase in the frequency and intensity of some of the natural disasters that include hydroclimatic events. And these events, including droughts, floods, tropical cyclones, and epidemics, have had devastating impacts on communities, livelihoods, infrastructure, and loss of life in the socio-economic sectors. So recognizing the urgent need to mitigate these risks to vulnerable population, the UN Early Warning Initiative has emerged as a proactive approach to management of some of these disasters, and this includes even in Africa. On this slide, I just share with you a few extremes that we experience in this region, especially around Lake Victoria. It has been observed that the trends in temperatures have been going up in Africa and actually increasing more slightly than the global average. In the year 2023, from the State of Climate report, it is observed that the increase has actually been 0.3 degree per decade. And this affects many other systems, including precipitation, which has shown market variability and it comes with a lot of effects. So some of the extreme events to note in the region include flooding, droughts, heat wave, landslides, and in the region around Nile Basin region, lightning and thunderstorms are frequently becoming significant. So early warning is therefore going to be key for creating sustainable resilience for communities. So in the wake of the early warning initiative, Africa agreed to integrate all early warning activities within its regional strategies and priorities. And also there was need to develop a roadmap and an action plan for the implementation of this in Africa. And this plan has been developed in the groundbreaking group of partner collaboration with organizations that have been able to come together and develop this action plan. And this action plan again builds on some of the ongoing activities and initiatives in the region to provide direction in addressing weather, water, and climate-related challenges, especially hydroclimatic challenges. So the strategy includes implementing activities around 4 main foundational pillars. Pillar 1 that relates to disaster risk knowledge and management. In this pillar, it aims to collect data, especially risk assessment, to increase knowledge on hazards and vulnerability and trends in the region. Pillar 2, which involves observation, monitoring, analysis, and forecasting to be able to collect the relevant information, and focus on improving monitoring, observing climate parameters, and also supports closing gaps that exist in our observation networks, including hydrological observations. Pillar 3 that relates to dissemination and communication of early warning information. Under this pillar, we're promoting establishment of robust and reliable communication channels to be able to disseminate early warning information, leveraging on the digital technology that we are living in. And pillar 4 that deals with preparedness and response capabilities. So under this pillar, we're recognizing the roles of the community in involvement in disaster risk reduction mechanism and preparedness, and to enhance response in terms of distress. So the plan has what it considers as success stories, what we'll need to achieve in order to be able to say that we are implementing this early warning. And we are looking at various success stories from various pillars. So for pillar 1, I just highlight a few here. You can refer to the plan to get quite a number of these success stories, what it will look like. But we are looking at countries having a minimum capability to produce quality and timely risk information. We are looking at those who need to access this information in a standardized form can be able to do it. Relevant actors can also use this risk information. The risk knowledge capability is built through a combination of local and indigenous knowledge. And then we are able to have a disaster risk assessments that are based on comparable methodologies in various countries in Africa. Under pillar 2, again, we have this plan develops what success ought to look like. We are looking at most countries having national plans, actions, and capacity to implement some of the observing systems. Colleagues have just referred to the hydrological observing systems, but also the other global observing systems and regional basic networks. We're also looking at being able to utilize remote sensing, having surface networks, and ocean observation at various resolutions to meet specific recommended needs, and also strengthening upper air observations by maintaining and expanding activities that are related to this, and then also providing accurate and timely warnings that are generated, and alerting authorities' capacities are strengthened in most countries to be able to do this. For pillar 3, the action plan talks of partnerships between alerting authorities and sectoral holders, stakeholders, and line ministries are developed and strengthened to improve reaching last mile users. We are looking at countries having standard operating procedures on warning dissemination, and also established and operationalized regulatory frameworks. Approach is followed to ensure that early warning and geolocated risk information reach populations at risk and in time for them to be able to react, and communication systems support national and regional centralized repository systems. And the preparedness pillar, we are looking at a success story where we are having operational multi-sectoral coordination structures in place. For example, regional anticipatory action working groups being formed and are able to respond, national anticipatory action community practice in place, and working groups on emergency and preparedness in place. And all national and local governments have plans, early response plan, that is, to be able to activate anytime they're required. and also learning from colleagues. Peer learning mechanisms are in place. All countries have multi-hazard early warning systems, informed actions, and most of the people exposed to risks from disasters are protected through anticipatory actions. So the action plan is a 5-year plan running from 2023-2027. Is actually obtained from the global action plan that was developed a while ago and launched in Egypt, and has been formulated to identify regional priorities and action tracks, building on the priorities catalytic actions, and also that are identified in this global action. And then the plan takes into consideration Africa's unique needs and existing gaps and opportunities already in place, the governance systems, the capacities that we have, the technology and infrastructure in place, and some of the ongoing early warning initiatives, including the ones that have been referred to by colleagues in the presentations earlier. So the governance structure of this action plan puts the African Union as the one providing the political leadership. In order for us to be able to implement this action plan, we will need support from all the partners in the region, and the African Union will be providing political leadership to the implementation of the action plan in the continent and supporting the lead agencies that are leading various pillars in this plan. And also we're looking at establishing an effective governance and coordination mechanism that is very crucial to ensure timely and coordinated dissemination of critical information as outlined out in this action plan. So an effective governance and coordination mechanism for early warning system in Africa will involve collaboration of all stakeholders, all communities, all civil organizations that will be able to provide input to implement these. So in this action plan, there is formed a steering committee on the action plan that will be carrying this action plan forward. And it involves all agencies, including the pillar leads and AUC. And the committee primarily is going to look at policy development that will be able to actualize this plan. We'll be looking at the issues of coordination, issues of various stakeholders playing different roles, resource mobilization. We realize that we need a lot of resources to be able to implement this plan. So this committee will be trying to look at ways in which they can be able to raise resources and bring together donors who can be able to support this, capacity building programs for institutions in countries in order to provide this early warning initiative, and also monitoring and evaluation and reporting on the progress that has been achieved so far, advocacy and awareness, knowledge management, and continuous improvement of the early warning systems in Africa. So during this launch of this report in Nairobi recently, during the Africa Climate Summit, also there was launch of another document, the States of Climate in Africa 2022, that was also launched in this summit. And this report basically looks at the state of climate in the year 2022 in Africa. And it has documented some of the extreme events, some of the social impacts that came along with the changing climate, changing variability of climate in the year 2022. And if you go through it, you'll notice a lot of issues related to droughts, especially in the East Africa, some of the related to flooding in West Africa, and tropical cyclone impacts in Southern Africa. They will all be documented here. And every year, a report focuses on one of the topical themes that is current. So this for 2022, 2 major themes were identified to do with loss and damage. This was a theme that was carried through from last COP and being carried through the next COP coming up in Dubai, and also the early warning for all as a topical issue currently being captured in this document. I encourage you to look at it, see how the hydrological community can be able to contribute to both these documents. As a way of conclusion, the implementation of the early warning in Africa will be influenced primarily by these 3 items here: inclusivity, how we bring everybody on board, accessibility of the information, and integration into the existing systems. To achieve the early warning vision for all, governments, organizations, humanitarian agencies, and communities must work together in a coordinated manner and invest in some of the areas such as technology, infrastructure, capacity building, in order to get the latest information and technology to be able to drive these. And partnerships especially with the international organizations, donors, and private sector, can provide valuable support in terms of funding, expertise, and technological innovations. So early warning is not just a concept, but is a call for all of us to be able to take action to ensure that everybody is covered by this system by the year 2027. Thank you, and that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Zablon, for that wonderful presentation. Kindly, if you have questions, you can post them into the Q&A. I now welcome the next presenter. Rui, kindly.
Oh, okay. I thought that the UNDR is going next, but okay, I can go. Hold on, let me just see my presentation. Hold on a sec. There, now I have to put in the. Okay, can you see the slides only, not the note?
Washington, do you mind if I make a request? You and Gerard, your mic is closed.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
because I'll be having another meeting, so and mine is not a presentation, if you don't mind.
Okay, okay.
Should I let the UNDR go first?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay.
Thanks.
Stop it. Okay. I think I stopped my presentation, did I?
Yeah, thank you so much, colleagues. Yeah, so thanks, Zablon, for the good presentation. I think that reflects the discussions that we have had for the longest period of time working on this early warning for all initiative, because you should note that UNDRR and the WMO are co-leading the initiative at the global level, but at the same time also UNDRR is leading the pillar 1 of the early warning for all initiative. Yeah, so before the early warning for all initiative, UNDRR together with other implementing partners have been involved in a number of early warning related activity and initiative. And for this one, I want to highlight the CRUISE initiative, the Climate Risk Early Warning for All initiative, but also the Water Theatre of Climate Action initiative. I believe that it has been presented here. But also wanted to recall the UNDRR as a custodian of the Sendai framework. And under the Sendai framework, there is a target G speaks directly to the early warning for all, in that target G is looking at the substantially increase the availability and access to the multi-hazard early warning system. The only difference is that the Sendai framework has a target of 2030, whereby the early warning for all has a target of 2027. So in a nutshell, it's like the early warning for all is supporting the implementation, early implementation of the Sendai framework, because it's looking at the implementation by 2027. One important aspect that you need to consider is that there is a specific implementation arrangement. I don't know if this one has already been shared, but I wanted maybe to look at that one. I don't know if you're in a position to see my screen. So I just wanted to reflect on, yeah, so the implementation of, my colleague Zablon has talked about the implementation arrangement at the continental level, but I wanted to highlight.
We didn't see your presentation. Are you sharing your PPT?
No, I'm just sharing one slide of the presentation. I'm sharing the screen, just one slide. Can you see it?
Okay.
No.
Not yet.
Okay, so if you can't see it, then I can still talk about it. So how is it implementation? How this early warning for all is being implemented at national level? Because the focus of the initiative is at the local level. In that we are looking at the rollout phase, whereby in the phase of launching the initiative in all the target countries. And what does it mean? In that countries receive the letters from the UN Secretary General to nominate focal points. This will be the leading institution for provide political leadership at country level for the implementation of the Early Warning for All initiative. Yeah, it's okay if you can't see the presentation. I've just stopped sharing the presentation. Once that is done, the second aspect point is that we are moving into doing a stakeholders mapping. By stakeholders mapping, we are looking at who are those people involved in the implementation of the Early Warning for All initiative in those countries. And then what are their role and their responsibility? That's also very important. And it's also very important that we look at the gap analysis. So we try to understand where the gap lies, because a lot of initiatives have already been taken into those countries. A lot of contribution, a lot of investment went into early warning system. So here it's not about starting something from scratch, but it's building on what exists. So that gap analysis is very important to understand the entry point for additional financing to support the global coverage or the national coverage of the early warning system at national level. So different pillars have developed different toolkits to support the rollout of the gap analysis. So the toolkit basically is more oriented toward pillars, so that you get to understand what is the pillar in what the need in pillar 1, what is not yet covered in pillar 2, what is not yet covered in pillar 3 and pillar 4, and so on. But also there is that dimension of the inter-pillar coordination that is very important. The other aspect is that once that one is done, we combine all the outcome of the gap analysis into what we call a roadmap, which is one document that represents or addresses or looks at, highlights all the gaps identified in those pillars. So this will move into a roadmap design, having a document that address the key gaps that need to be captured, and the investment, so that we have this national coverage. And then once we have this roadmap, you try to budget on those activities. And after these activities have been budgeted, it takes us into a project proposal preparation phase. Yeah, so, and our target is that by mid or end 2024, all these countries should be having a proposal document ready for being funded to support now the implementation. So that we give at least 3 years for the implementation of the project proposal, and a focus on the sustainability of the initiative at country level. And to ensure that if you are looking at 2020, 2025, 2026, 2027, that gives us 3 years to ensure that the gap has already been funded and activity are taking place to ensure that global coverage. So the 3 years, as I said, that is the phase 5. 5 is all about the roadmap implementation phase of this initiative. And we have given a lot, 3 years out of the whole initiative to ensure that that roadmap is being addressed. Under the pillar 1, UNGRR, I wanted to highlight some of the focus areas for us. The first one is all about having this understanding the role and the responsibilities, doing a stakeholders mapping at national level. But also it's very important to look at the data infrastructure in place. And when I talk about data, where the data, the quality of data, the usefulness of that data, and maybe some places where we could use maybe proxy data, because the focus here is on it's not on the hazard, because we are moving into this impact-based early warning system. And when we talk about the impact-based early warning system, basically we are looking at data related to hazard, the frequencies, the magnitude, but it's very important also we look at the exposure, where people are living, the other critical element, the infrastructure at risk, but also the level of vulnerability, because currently we are having small events in the region, on the continent, having serious impact. So sometimes the focus, sometimes the issue is not about the magnitude of the events, but also a number of predispositions that linked to the driver's vulnerability that need to be addressed, but also the capacities to respond or to recover. So those are some of the data that we need to look at. But another important aspect is that we want to give consideration into the establishment of a risk information management platform. We have realized that we normally say that countries don't have data, but countries have data. And then we have another assumption that countries are not willing to share data, but countries are willing to share data. It's only that there is no platform for data sharing. Yeah, so we need to invest into that data sharing platform to ensure that we have data on all these dimensions, on the hazard, on vulnerability, on exposure, on livelihood, and related data on different watersheds, very relevant, so that we are in a better position to address some of these challenges, because we can't move into impact-based early warning system if you don't have data on population, don't have data on livelihood, on income, on level of education, and that data is available. So our focus, UNGRR focus, is to be about establishing a risk information management system, whereby we also need to review the existing risk profile. We have invested quite a lot in developing the risk profiles, but we need to review some of them. And also we need to ensure that we have an interactive GeoNode platform that supports the data sharing, and also linking the GeoNode platform to the loss and damage data sets. It was also captured in Zablon, but also want to highlight that UNGRR has been leading the loss and damage data. The disinfector now is moving to second generation. So it will be very important to ensure that we have data on loss and damage, to ensure that we're in a better position maybe to develop triggers, to develop threshold, be it on flood, be it on drought, or any other hazard. But it also be very important to look at, to develop a capacity for hotspot zoning, because we realize that this event, they don't have nationwide coverage, apart from maybe drought that has a various coverage. But most of this, especially for flood, is that they are occurring in a specific zone. So that hotspot zoning will be very important, so that we strengthen, maybe we extract the watershed, we do a thorough hydrological analysis in that watershed. We overlay data on population, we overlay data of critical infrastructure, we overlay data on income, and the like, and the capacities in that community, to ensure that now we are moving to this impact-based, people-centered, end-to-end early warning system. So that will be the focus of our approach. And once that is already established, we can also try to understand that, because this another aspect or another element that we have noticed, there is a more of quote-unquote a proliferation of different early warning system decision support tools in a country. There is that genuine reason to ensure that these tools speak to one another, they build on one another, and they are interactive. So it will be very important to identify these tools to ensure that they are building on one another. I'll take an example. In a country, you'll find that from the Met or Hydromet, we have a map room. But this map room does not have other important data, like on population, on education, on maybe key infrastructures. So you can't do that overlay to understand the number of people will be affected if it's in a watershed, the number of critical infrastructures, the number of children likely to be affected. So we are looking at that integration of different early warning system tools, and also where the emergency operations center is in place, if we could link the early warning system tools that you have developed to support the response and coordination in a crisis situation. So that interlink between early warning system and early response will be addressed if there is that linkage between the situation room and also the emergency operations center. But also very important that we link the early warning support, decision support tool, to existing regional and continental early warning systems in place. Already a number of situation rooms are available in the region. We have ICPAC, which has an early warning, a situation room that is already connected to the continental, sharing data with ACMAD. We want to see if also countries could also get and interconnected with this other network that has already been established, so that we have this broad coverage of early warning system. But last but not the least, so about the development of product and services, but also supporting the risk governance because a number of structures are in place, and also issues to do with institutional regulation, TRM policies and laws, but also capacity development is a very important aspect that you may want to look at. In a nutshell, those are some of the key ideas that I wanted to share with you, and I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that intervention. Maybe if you have a question for the presenter, then you can just put it in the chat. So let's have Roy on to continue with our presentation.
Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So hi, I'm Rui Kotani, Disaster Risk Coordinator at GEO Secretariat. GEO stands for Group on Earth Observations. And we are housed within the BRIML. And thank you so much, Washington, for putting me as one of the speakers. I'll be speaking about how GEO has been supporting the Early Warning 4 initiative as a supporting implementing partner. So you may not know GEO, but GEO is the single largest global partnership focused on Earth observations for impact, providing the global community with Earth observation information to understand and act on the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. We've been in existence for almost 20 years, over 7 continents. We have our own governance and a membership of 114 countries. And because we are a network, we have the membership of countries as well as the organizations. And there are 140 international and regional organizations, including the BRIML and UNDR, as well as 19 private sector and civil society organizations, as well as all these world-leading scientists belong to these member countries or organizations. And the GEO Secretariat is hosted by the BRIML. So I am the BRIML staff member, but I dedicate my work for the GEO Secretariat's work. And so I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands what I mean by Earth observations. Earth observation, what I mean by that is data and information collected about our planet. And this includes space-based, surface-based, and other data, as well as the human as sensors, citizen observations. Earth observations are neutral and objective and provide reliable, timely, and continuous information. And this year is particularly important for GEO because our annual event, annual conference is happening in November. And that brings all the partners, members, and their ministers. And then we're going to have our member countries to renew our mandate for the 3rd time in its history and endorse GEO's post-2025 strategy for the next 10 years. We are basically a network that has been striving to promote the open data, open access to knowledge and information, as well as solutions. And we are going to really drive and step further up and become a network that can provide Earth intelligence. And so this is an important event scheduled in November 6th through 10th in Cape Town, South Africa. And all of you are invited to join us at this important milestone of GEO. And I want to let you know that the exhibition space are still available. So if you're interested, please check out this website and to see the information. Please make sure that you register by 6th of October. So back on the main topic of today, which is what GEO has been doing as a supporting implementing partner of the Earth observation, early warning for all. So we have been active in two pillars. One is pillar 1 led by UNDR on disaster risk knowledge, and the pillar 2 on observation and forecasting. And we are working with all these partners. So as our UNDR colleagues just explained, the pillar 1 is led by UNDR and participated by all these members. And as he explained that we have so far 7 outcome themes. And one of which called Innovation for Risk Knowledge is co-led by GEO, and together with GCF and IFRC. And very recently, UNFCCC Secretariat has also joined this outcome themes. And I'm just going to touch on a little bit on this activity 7. So under this activity, we are thinking about doing a global workshop and build a new partnership, including the private sector, to make the innovation and technologies to be more applicable for producing risk knowledge. And we hope to come up with country-based activities. And to be the basis of all this, UNFCCC Secretariat and GEO Secretariat are about to launch a new activity to produce a knowledge product on innovation for risk knowledge. There is going to be a formal discussion at UNFCCC Tech meeting Technology Executive Committee, and this work is going to look into and highlighting the technology solution for improving risk knowledge in developing countries, especially LDCs and SIDS. Sorry, I cannot move this forward. We're going to make it fit for purpose under early warning for all, as it fits under the activity 7 of the pillar 1. So next, I just wanted to touch a little bit on this first group of 30 countries and where GEO has been providing solutions. These are just some of the countries and also the so-called projects of GEO. 3 types of kind of obvious, 3 types of projects, ongoing projects that produces freely accessible data and solutions related to early warning for all. GeoGlam, the Global Agricultural Monitoring, which does provide information about a drought, has been operational in Uganda and Mozambique. DIAS, Data Integration and Analysis System, has been working with UNESCO in a bunch of countries, but in Chad and Niger. GeoGLOS is a global water sustainability initiative, already working in Ecuador and Ethiopia, but the new activity is starting in Mozambique and Uganda. And we talked about these sort of activities of the GEO projects in these countries in the symposium back in June. We had the honor of having both UNDR and the RIML and all these leads, as well as IFRC and the REAP. And all these project leads or reps were present. Oops. I don't know if I have time, so I might just skip. So basically the GeoGlum, is, as I said, can provide the drought information. So they got the funding from the World Bank, and work with the Uganda President's Office, and they built the early warning crop monitoring. And now it's part of the disaster warning system. And so the government realized the saving of $2.5 million US, which is 51% against an overall emergency fund in the fiscal year 2016-17 as a result of decline in emergency food for Karamoja region, which is a very highly risked area. And so we're making, this is one of our success stories where 150K people have been really helped, made the difference. And new crop watch system was recently launched in Mozambique. And another project, DIAS, stands for the Data Integration Analysis System. As I said, they were part of, well, they are serving as another international initiative called IFI, which was launched by the partners including WMO, UNDR, and UNESCO. And they've been implemented in Asia and West Africa, including the two of the early warning for all initial group of country, Chad and Niger. And let's see. So this is just sort of like showing how they can do the flood inundation simulation maps like this. As a result, if you can use this tool, for example. And they also have the e-learning training system among them, and they've trained the practitioners and trained the trainers in these two countries as well as the other countries in the Two River Basin. Lastly, I really want to talk about GeoGlows. Because actually our local partner, sorry, I shouldn't say local partner, our key member has recently moved to Nile Basin Initiative, and I bet you know, so we Calvin Swara, he was an instrumental partner in implementing GeoGlow's stream flow forecasting system in Malawi. So if he's around, I want to also have him comment if we have time. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, great. And I just wanted to also point out that yesterday's first session had the presentation also on GeoGlows by Dr. Laley Hales. And so I'll just kind of show you his slides. Well, this is actually not his, but let me just first give you the basic information about GeoGlows. It's a global stream forecasting service, which allows local stakeholders to empower stakeholders to solve water management problems, including flood, drought, water, food security issues, and by providing water intelligence, they need to make decisions. So GeoGlows offers this streamflow service, which is a worldwide application, like web-based application that enables users to forecast the overland water runoff and the river charge. And the streamflow service provides a set of 15-day forecasts together with 40-year historical simulation on an open website. So this is part of Rayleigh's presentation yesterday. Of course, it's the global coverage and it covers the Nile Basin areas. They got the funding from Severe Africa, and they're starting a new. They're planning on a new project in Kenya and Tanzania, as well as Uganda, under a new announcement made by the Vice President of the U.S. Sorry, somehow the slide doesn't move. GeoGlows has so many the successful stories, including what I said in the Uganda, Malawi, Dominican Republic. And I also wanted to emphasize that these are our contribution to WMO efforts. For example, well, especially effort on hydro-SOS and foods, just been presented earlier than me. And for example, in the cruise project in Southeast Asia and SIDS, it's a regional project. They did the flood monitoring and forecasting system for river basin in the Dominican Republic, and this was presented at Hydrological Assembly by INAMI in Ecuador, as well as the Hydromet Agency in Dominican Republic, and also, what was the other one? I just kind of blank out, but so this is the Malawi project. Do you want to come in, Mr. Wara? Calvin, are you still around?
Yes, I'm around. Thank you so much, Rui, for that presentation and providing an overview of what GEO is doing. In Malawi, we had two particular situations that we were dealing with. We were using hydrometry to, Malawi is one of the countries that are commonly or annually ravaged by flood-induced cyclones, especially in the southern part. Under that concept, through the funding with GCF, the Green Climate Fund, we partnered with the local agency to establish an integrated community-based flood early warning system that ensure that the warning is provided by the community, but also the people who are mandated to respond are given support in terms of giving directions on where to respond. So we integrated a telemetric-based that is being administered by the Minister of Water, and then infuse it with the satellite technology where we draw data from the GeoGlows platform into that system. This is good in two reasons. One, it provides opportunity to localize the global simulation model. And then secondly, it also provides another opportunity for the community to be guided in terms of the receiving the information that is coming from the platform. The system has been highly successful in responding to the cyclone of 2022, Cyclone Anna, and Cyclone Freddy of 2023. And currently, the World Bank has supported the second phase for the system to be upscaled into 10 districts covering all the 40 sites. We appreciate also the African Development Bank is now coming in to upscale that system a little bit further to some 68 districts to cover the entire regions that floods. So it has been a highly successful system that other countries are learning from. It was demonstrated at the COP27 last year in Egypt, and we are seeing some tractions in terms of what is potent in other countries, like the Zambezi River Basin Commission, and also Mozambique is considering looking at it from that perspective. I think the reason why it's a little bit innovative is on the basis that at least the community are part and process of the information generations as well as the response. I think that is the clarifications I can give. The importance of the GEO group for this particular project was based on the informations that the telematic warning information is given in terms of hours. The possibility to extend the lead time from hours to days provided an opportunity for some anticipatory actions that would have been taken by the mandated institutions to respond to this particular disaster. Thank you so much, Roy. I think that gives some clarifications. If there is any question, I'm more than happy to support in response.
Thank you so much, Kelvin. And I wanted to let you let our WMO colleagues know that me and Kelvin's was already in touch before the planning of this online event. And as a GeoGlow's partner, I was hoping that I can also trying to have him and his colleague to be involved in the national launching event, perhaps in Uganda, because they're physically in Uganda. And I wanted to also emphasize that the GeoGlows in particular, the beauty of it is how it allows, it helps the local implementation together with the open, like satellite-based early warning system that's globally available already. And we have the track record of actually complementing and supporting the remote cruise projects, as well as UNDP-led GCF. And we also bring in the US donors and others. So like we're pretty good at complementing. I mean, like bringing the partners together, because after all, we are the group and the network. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. Looking forward to working with you all.
Thank you very much, Rui, for that wonderful presentation. I think now we need to go to the last presenter, Erica.
Hello, Washington. Colleagues, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. And now?
Yes, now we can see it.
Okay.
Thanks.
So let me see if I can turn my camera on. Great. Okay. One moment while I make it. Sorry, trying to make it into presentation mode. Okay. Do you see my actual slides or my presentation slides?
They're not in the...
Am I in the full? Okay. Do you see like the presenter version or?
I think it's the presenter version, Erica.
Okay. How's that?
Still unchanged. Oh, now it's good.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you. So thank you, colleagues, for the invitation to join you. I'm very pleased to be here with you, and apologies for joining a bit late. I had some other speaking engagements. So yes, really, I just wanted to first welcome all of you, the Excellencies, distinguished guests, and colleagues. And as I imagine you're discussing over the next couple of days, the world really is off track in terms of meeting its climate goals. And for example, we've just experienced the hottest 3-month period on record. We've had a number of record-breaking heat waves, wildfires, rainfall, and unfortunately floods, which have all had a very devastating impact on people and our planet. And really, if it wasn't already mentioned, maybe perhaps just a moment of silence for the horrific loss of thousands of lives in Libya. And this is really just the latest tragic example of some of the extreme events that we have coming up before us, unfortunately. And therefore, I really don't think it will be the last. So I really think, the Early Warnings for All initiative is looking to at least warn people while we try to get back on track with our greenhouse gas emissions and get global warming under control. There's a lot we can do in terms of at least making sure people have access to information and can take action to save their lives and livelihood. So this is really kind of the premise behind the Early Warnings for All initiative. I believe one of the greatest climate injustices is that around the world, half of the countries still do not have the minimum core capabilities to provide actionable hydromet warnings to their citizens. So at least in a coordinated way, multi-hazard, looking at how the events evolve over the actual lifespan of the event. Because a number of these are actually just becoming more and more cascading, and what started as a tropical cyclone, can really quickly become a massive flooding event. So how we kind of look and work together in coordinated fashion to prevent some of these disasters, I think, is really the challenge that we have before us. So it was actually on World Meteorological Day last year that Gutierrez, the UN Secretary General, announced a new initiative that would protect everyone on Earth with early warnings in 5 years. And so we've been delighted to work with our partners on this initiative and develop an executive action plan. So we've worked with partners, and we've also worked with our members. A lot of at least WMO's contributions to this executive Early Warnings for All action plan really build on the existing work of our technical commissions. So it's been a multi and intergovernmental process in terms of the contributions that have come and have been put into the plan on WMO's side. This plan was launched at COP last year. It's available online, so I'll circulate this. If you're not familiar with it, you can access it on WMO's library. I think it's really important to note that it really has high visibility and political support, probably because it really builds from and aligns with WMO and other partners' foundational elements across the early warnings, early action, different components. So this is the plan itself is really organized around 4 different pillars. The first being disaster risk knowledge. The second, detection, observations, monitoring, analysis, and forecasting of the hazards. The third pillar is warning, dissemination, and communication. And the fourth is preparedness and response capabilities. So the first pillar is actually led by UNDRR. But as you can see, there's actually a constellation of other UN partners and collaborators that are supporting, countries in developing and rolling out their multi-hazard early warning systems, and also ramping up their anticipatory action capabilities. Pillar 2 is led by WMO. ITU leads Pillar 3, and FRC is leading Pillar 4. Just a very brief overview in terms of the programmatic approach that's been taken in terms of kind of rolling out the initiative. As I mentioned, there was a high-level action plan that was launched at COP. There's an advisory panel, which basically exists. There's a number of heads of UN agencies that sit on that and provide higher kind of guidance in terms of the implementation of the initiative. There's a global interpillar coordination group that meets every week and is looking at how we can best support countries and regions in really kind of rolling out and ensuring that we have the capacity building and tools to enable multi-hazard early warning systems in countries. And there's also a work stream on monitoring and evaluation, which connects really nicely to the Sendai Framework Monitor. So we're looking to ensure that there's less reporting in turn and from member states, and just more action and being able to see the change that's happening on the ground. At the regional level, we're really looking to build on existing mechanisms. And so I kind of look for your support in how this could be taken forward in your discussions. And at the country level, the way that the initiative has kind of been brought forward is that there were 30 initial countries that were identified by the Secretary General, and a letter went out from Gutierrez to the missions in New York, requesting that these countries indicate a national focal point that would kind of lead the initiative from the government side. And then the UNSG tasked the resident coordinators within the countries to bring together the different country teams to support rollout of the initiative and coordinated action, at least from the UN front. So to support this process, we have a toolkit that's been developed. Hopefully my slide will advance. Apologies. But within maybe, while we wait for the slides to catch up, what's in the toolkit is just kind of an outline in supporting countries to kind of have example materials. For example, there's terms of reference for the multi-sectoral group that would oversee the initiative in the country. There's a checklist which supports establishing the minimum core capabilities that we would hope to see in countries to enable multi-hazard early warning systems to be effective. There's a stakeholder mapping template, and then there's just a concept note and agenda that people could leverage to launch a workshop or to kind of convene a workshop. And let me see if I can share my screen again, because I see that it's no longer presenting. Okay, hopefully I'm back. So really all of the materials are optional and can be skipped if the country feels that they already have a really good group that's coordinating their multi-hazard early warning system approach. A lot of countries so far are indicating their interest to leverage existing disaster risk reduction platforms. So that I think we're really just looking at how we can scale up what's working and kind of bring together the various stakeholders and also the resources to support action in this context. I believe maybe my colleagues before might have mentioned that we recently launched a project in Ethiopia, which was funded by the Dutch government, Water at the Heart of Climate Action. And we're looking forward to working with countries and partners in 4 Nile Basin countries, including Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Uganda. And this really brings together a lot of the partners and looking forward to identifying and charting out the next steps in this process. So sorry for the technical difficulties, but that was really what I wanted to share with you today, and wishing you really great discussions and looking forward to any guidance that you might have on how we can connect to you and leverage this forum in terms of implementation of the initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erica, for such a nice presentation. And thank you to all presenters and all participants for staying this long. We really appreciate your participation and your contributions. We can see we have a lot of questions in the chat. I think most of our presenters have also been engaged with some other assignments. So what I would request is that maybe if we have some burning questions, especially to other panelists who are here, you can raise them for our presenters who are still around. Do we have maybe some questions from some of the panelists who are around? Okay. So we don't have much of the questions to other panelists, but maybe a quick question to you, maybe Zablon and Erica, and this also goes to UNDRR. Just could you just briefly explain to participants how all these initiatives are coordinated, the early warning implementation at the global level, at the regional level, like we have Africa, and then at the national level. Because one of the participants had also asked there, like, who has the overall coordination of this early warning at the country level? Maybe Erica and Zablon, you can give us some insights about that. Thanks.
Yes, just in terms of the process that's kind of been taken, as I mentioned in my presentation, the UN Secretary General Gutierrez sent out a letter to essentially the head of state via the New York missions and announced the initiative, at least to the 30 initial countries, and requested, they announced the initiative and welcomed, collaboration and rolling out the initiative in the country, and if they were interested, to nominate a focal point. So really the person in the driver's seat, I think it's really important, is whoever the head of state has identified as the focal point in the country for the initiative. And it's really important to note, so there's the government focal point, and this is extremely important in terms of having local ownership and engagement with the different ministries. And then there's also support from the UN through the resident coordinator that is really kind of bringing together the various UN agencies to support implementation through the different pillars. So the UN resident coordinator is, coordinating with the focal point that was identified by the head of government, and they're collaborating to kind of, if it's found to be needed, having an initial workshop to kind of bring everyone together and agree on the priority activities that could be undertaken to really support bringing in or enhancing the capabilities on multi-hazard early warning systems.
Thank you very much, Erica. Zablon?
Yes, thank you, Washington. I think Erica has basically summarized how the lead is done at the national level. The regional level, we are looking at direction being given by UNDRR and WMO at the continental level, but we have strong support from the AUC, especially on political leverage and the visibility of this initiative, and a group of stakeholders that are working together to implement this. I did mention in my presentation that we have formed a steering committee at this level that will be taking this initiative forward at the regional level. So that's all I'd like to add, Washington. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Zablon.
Maybe to add something on the coordination. I think at the global level, it's clear in that UNDRR and WMO are co-leading the initiative together with other pillar leads, and also there is that dimension of inter-pillar coordination. So they also taking place because they are not standalone as pillars, but they feed into one another. So at regional level, colleague Zablon also presented on the steering committee at at continental level, UNDRR, WMO, AUC together with other pillar lead. So that one is taking shape. It has not yet been established, and discussion are going on to have the first meeting of the steering committee taking place. At national level, Erica mentioned about the focal point from the government. This one is to provide political leadership, but also during the launch, we are looking at having a national coordination mechanism. This is more of an operational entity that will support the implementation of the early warning for all, together with the support from the UN country team and the designated focal point from the UN country team. Over.
Yeah, thank you very much for that clarification. And just to add that also, we realize that to get reliable warnings, then we cannot have reliable warnings unless we have some valid data. So basically, there should be a lot of, we should also be thinking like, where is the source of data, and how shall we have reliable data to generate all these reliable warnings? So the issue of valid data is very, very important. And I think in this region, especially in the Nile Basin countries, I think the issue of strengthening the monitoring, I think, is still something that is basically needed and need to be worked on. And then also, I think we also need to remember that the success of the early warnings for all will basically depends also on the approach that a country is taking. Because if we are aiming to reach everyone in everywhere, then you think that one could be best addressed at a country level. Because let's say you have a country where you have 87 different communities and you want these warnings to be communicated to them, then it means at a global level, it's very difficult to translate all those warnings to those 87 different communities. But once we have the framework, then each and every country could be able to come with their own dissemination means of how to reach out to their communities. And this was also in response to one of the questions that one participant raised, like, how do we ensure that each and every person is basically reached by these warnings? But you find that there are also remote communities where the government basically understands better how they could reach out to them. So it's basically a collaborative framework, and that's why my colleagues, they are saying that it's not one service that is responsible for this, and it's therefore to have someone basically who coordinates all these organizations. I don't know if I saw some hands sometimes back, but I assume that now our time is up. I don't want us to just proceed with this. So I would just like to say that thank you very much, colleagues, once again, for even the people we invited for joining our session. Thank you so much, presenters, our partners from GEO. Thank you so much from UNDRR. We really appreciate your availability, and colleagues from WMO for the short notice just to be available for the presentation. And thank you very much to our other WMO colleagues who have worked also in the region. Like we could see Mr. Tofik is also there, and they have also attended this online session, and other country participants, especially those who are participating in the AdroSOS project. And I would also like to extend my appreciation to our NBI colleagues for this great honor, just inviting WMO basically to be part of this forum. So thank you so much, NBI colleagues, for extending this invitation to us. And I will just like to inform you that we are going to have also a physical session somewhere between on 17th, that is in Entebbe, but and that session will be presenting maybe much of a high level. We shall have some high-level presentations, not much of the technical presentations. I would therefore like to hand over to Mudaderi just to make some announcements to participants, especially concerning the sessions tomorrow. Thank you very much, colleagues, and we are going to meet. We have shared the presentations, and I hope all of you have been able to access them. In case you've not accessed any, we shall also share with our NBI colleagues. Thanks, Mudadir. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Washington, for the outstanding presentation today by WMO and UNDDR. Thank you very much. I just would like to mention that tomorrow also we have two interesting sessions. The first one will start at 9 a.m. East African time, and the second one will start at 2 p.m. East African time. The morning session, it is about implications of climate change on sustainable development and disaster risk management in hydrological basins. And the second session at 2 p.m., it is about management of flood emergencies. So I would like to invite all the participants who attend this WMO session also to attend tomorrow these two interesting sessions. Thank you very much, and bye-bye. And I declare the session of today closed. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.